AP Human Geographers. We are here today to go over your Grand Review Unit 3. So this week, that is all that you have to be worried about is the Unit 3 section of the Grand Review. So this goes over cultural patterns and processes. Remember we talked about with Unit 1 and 2 that the Grand Review is kind of open to different perspectives, open to different interpretations. So we're going to give you our interpretation. And of course, if you have any questions at all, then you can always contact us on Teams or otherwise to get any clarification that you need. So let's jump right in. We start off with religion. There's a chart on the first page that asks you to look at some different religions, and you're going to tell if it is mono or polytheistic, ethnic or universalizing, and what its hearth region is. So the first one, number 77, is Buddhism. Buddhism is kind of a difficult one to answer, mono or polytheistic, because that's one that kind of varies depending upon where you're looking at and what period of time you're looking at. So I just put both. Just know that if you are practicing the Mahayana form of Buddhism, then that is a monotheistic religion where you worship the Buddha. But if you are practicing the Theravada form of Buddhism, then that can actually be practiced alongside any other religion, including a polytheistic religion. So that's more of like a lifestyle instead of an actual solid faith. So I put both. You could put either. It is universalizing, and the hearth region is South Asia. The next one is Hinduism, number 78, and that is a polytheistic religion. It is an ethnic religion, and its hearth region is also South Asia. Number 79 is Islam. It is a monotheistic religion. It's universalizing, and the hearth region is the Middle East. Judaism is number 80. That is monotheistic. It is an ethnic religion, and its hearth region is also the Middle East. Mormonism is number 81. Mormonism is monotheistic. That's like a branch of Christianity. It is universalizing, and its hearth region is the United States. That's like the more modern branch of Christianity. Number 82, Orthodox Christianity. That is going to be monotheistic because it is still Christianity. It is universalizing because it is still Christianity. And its hearth region is going to be Eastern Europe. So it developed in the area of like Greece and Turkey. Protestantism is monotheistic and universalizing because it's still a branch of Christianity. And its hearth region is going to be in Europe, specifically in Germany. That's where it developed. And then number 84, Roman Catholicism, is monotheistic, universalizing because it is still Christianity. And its hearth region, realistically, Catholics are considered to be like the first Christians, like the original branch of Christianity. So you could say that the Middle East, because that's where, you know, the life of Jesus took place. However, just know that it became very popular within the Roman Empire. That's why we call it Roman Catholicism. So you could put Rome or you could put the Middle East.
Okay, on our next section, we have our matching. It says match the following. 85 is a fragmentation of a region into smaller units, and that would be B, balkanization. 86, a common language, would be G, lingua franca. And remember, that's going to be used as a go-between language to translate between various languages. Number 87 is a language formed from two other languages, and that would be D, Creole or Creolized language. Number 88, an example of ethnic nationalism would be H, Nunavut, which is a northern Canadian province where the residents are primarily Inuit people who push for social and political reform and representation. So they're going to have that sense of ethnic pride and nationalism. Number 89, an example of linguistic nationalism would be F, and that is Gaelic. And that's going to be a specific language in Scotland that is isolated because of the Germanic invasions. They were basically kept apart from that kind of transition to the Germanic languages and kept their folk kind of culture separated from the rest of Europe. Number 90, an example of linguistic fragmentation would be I, Scandinavian. So the Scandinavian languages are going to have deviations in dialects and certain vocabulary, but overall they're going to have the same kind of root. So it's fragmentation because of the fact that it's kind of like, varied. Number 91, an example of how religion can influence geography. that would be E, feng shui. And so if you look at some of the major cities in China, you'll see skyscrapers with like holes in them or pieces missing because with these Chinese architects and engineers, they're going to basically not go off of what they want for the building to actually represent, but they're going to go off of what the flow of energy from the hills maybe down to the seaside is going to be. They want to make sure that they have a flow, a free-flowing area for spirits to be able to move freely, even with the urban structures present.
And that's all part of those Chinese traditional religions.
Number 92, the minority branch of Islam, but majority in Iraq and Iran would be Shiite. And remember, the majority branch of Islam would be Sunni. So you've got Sunni versus Shia or Shiite, and that division is going to cause a lot of tension and warfare all throughout history. Okay, 93, rigid separation of the races in South Africa in the 20th century. That would be A, apartheid. Number 94, an architectural style that diffused from New England to the Great Lakes would be C, Cape Cod.
The next section of the Grand Review asks you to identify each of the following as a centripetal force or a centrifugal force. So remember, centripetal force is something that brings the population together. Centrifugal force is going to be something that tears it apart. So 95, uneven development would be centrifugal. Uneven development just refers to certain areas developing at uneven rates. So that would mean that you have, like within one country, very, very rich areas and very, very poor areas. So that's obviously going to cause a lot of tension within the population. Number 96, sub-state nationalism. That would be centrifugal as well. If you are looking at one state and then you have sub-states, which are like, within the United States, the different states that we have, or provinces or whatever. If you have a lot of nationalism within those sub-states, then it is going to be a centrifugal force for the country as a whole because you're feeling more loyal to your sub-state rather than your country as a whole. Number 97, linguistic homogeneity. That would be centripetal force. That means everybody's speaking the same language. That's going to be very good for pulling people together because everybody can understand one another. Number 98, a strong tradition of local governance. This could really work either way, centrifugal or centripetal. The way I would see it as centrifugal would be that if you have a strong tradition of local governance, that means that your country as a whole, maybe like having a federal government, your country as a whole may see some issues with people feeling that like they're more loyal to your local governance rather than to like the federal government. But it could also be centripetal because if you have a strong tradition of that local governance, then that kind of brings people together, especially when you look at that localized area, then that governance is going to bring them together. So that could really be either one. Number 99, national symbols. That's going to be centripetal. Think of things like flags. That's going to increase that nationalism and bring people together. Number 100, that's going to be compact state. That would be centripetal. That's our ideal state shape. That's going to mean that everything is going to be sort of in a circular pattern, and the capital is going to be at the center, so it's perfect for communication. It's very good for transportation. No one's kind of left out, and so that's going to bring people together. Number 101 would be fragmented state, which is kind of the opposite of what I was saying with compact state. Fragmented state is going to have groups that are potentially isolated, which means that that would be a centrifugal force. And 102, external threats. I put that as centripetal because when you think of someone on the outside threatening your group, then that's going to potentially bring you all together to maybe fight that threat. All right, the next section asks you to classify each of the following as folk culture or popular culture. So 103, the Amish would be folk culture. 104, sports. That's not super specific, so I just put both because you do have some sports that are only practiced, only utilized in one area, and so that would make them folk culture. However, you have several sports like soccer or basketball that are practiced in a lot of different areas, and so those are considered pop culture. So it kind of depends on the sport you're looking at and where it's practiced. Number 105, small scale, that would be folk. 106, large scale, that would be pop. Number 107, slow change, that would be folk. 108, rapid change would be pop. 109, relocation diffusion, that is how folk culture spreads. 110, cultural homogeneity. That would be folk culture. That means everybody is practicing the same thing, which is pretty much impossible within pop culture. 111, a traditional diet. That would be folk culture. That's just referring to like localized traditional foods. Whereas something like 112, McDonald's, that would be pop culture. 113, blue jeans, that is pop culture, classic traditional reference to pop culture there. And 114, modern communication, would be pop culture.
All right. So for the last section, we just have multiple choice questions here. So number 115, economic migration was responsible for B, Guatemalans leaving Guatemala. So if we look at the actual first part of the sentence here, it says economic migration. So we have to remember it doesn't have anything to do with warfare or religion. So that's how we kind of narrow this down and do the process of elimination. If you look at A, Bosnians leaving Yugoslavia, that's going to be due to warfare. Muslims leaving India would be religion. Non-Arabs leaving Sudan would be warfare, again, the genocide in Darfur. And then Syrians leaving Syria, that would be war, the civil conflict going on in Syria from 2015 to present. Number 116, if 4 languages have similar words for numbers and the names of fish, but different names for a certain disease, what might be concluded about the time at which the disease first diffused? That would be B, the population divided and evolved into 4 different languages, and then the disease spread because they have different names, for that certain disease, but they're going to have, a similar kind of foundation for their language to begin with. Number 117, which of the following correctly sequences the continuum from language family to dialect? That's going to be E, Indo-European, Germanic, English, and Midland Northern. Number 118, blank is to Canada as blank is to the United States, and that's going to be French is to Canada as Spanish is to the United States. That's the second most spoken language within those countries. Number 119 has a lot of stuff listed here, and it's basically you need to identify which one fits with Mexico. So Mexico is, number 1, the largest number of legal immigrants into the United States. Number 2, the largest number of illegal immigrants to the United States. Number 3, a member of NAFTA, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement. Number 4, a member of OAS, or the Organization of American States. And number 5, predominantly Catholics. So H is the one that fits here because it is all 5 of those things. 120, which of the following aspects of diffusion of Western culture threaten non-Western ways of life? So all of these are a part of Western culture except for number 2, the subjugation of women. So that couldn't threaten non-Western ways of life because the subjugation of women is not part of Western culture. So it wouldn't be something that would diffuse, if that makes any sense. Okay, so that would be D. 1, 3, 4, and 5. That would be the loss of traditional values, Western control of media, alteration of traditional landscapes, and pollution because we see rapid and large-scale urbanization in Western societies. Number 121, the breakup of Yugoslavia was particularly violent because E, religion, language, and ethnicity produced divergent nationalities which made overlapping claims on land after the fall of the USSR. So yeah, that would be E.
All right, guys, so that wraps us up for Unit 3. Next week, we'll work on Unit 4 together, which is politics, so you can go ahead and get that ready. Those are already uploaded into Teams, so if you're bored, you could always go ahead and start working on it if you wanted to. Unit 3 is due by Friday of this week, but we've already mentioned that the due dates are kind of like suggestions to keep you on track. If you're behind, if you haven't done Unit 1 and 2 yet, then don't worry about it. Just get it done. Show it to us whenever it is finished. Turn that in on Teams or send it to us otherwise, and we'll take care of you. So I guess we'll see you next week.
All right, bye guys.
I love you. Why are you doing that?
That's 3. 3.
No, please don't do that.
Okay.